They live, we sleep. But if we stop sleeping, it's the end of this anti-human, post-human project that's now all over the news. And under the Green Deal, they want you locked up in your house. Well, now the virus is here right on time. David Icke's our guest. I want to go to some of your phone calls. Sherry, Jordan, Brian, Kevin, Steve, Fish, Jeff, and a few others in the time we have left. You've been really gracious with us. DavidIcke.com. Again, I'm your host, Alex Jones. Dave, we were talking during the break about the shark eyes of these individuals. I remember Mark Cornke 25 years ago would talk about that. You talk about that. I've met Janet Reno, been like 10 feet from her, and she was not even I mean, she was under heavy lights, and she had pupils all the way out. You couldn't even see the irises. And Tim Cook is in all these interviews for Vice and for CNN under bright lights in his face. You or I would have tiny little pupils. But if a cop pulled him over, he'd arrest him and say, what are you on? PCP, methamphetamine, 4 hits of LSD. I mean, 1 hit of LSD doesn't do that in my experience, people I've known that have taken it. And of course, that's a Photoshop photo. That's a joke, but he really looks like that in these videos. Let's show Brian Stelter now. I know folks that work at CNN, it's come out in leaks. Brian Stelter literally walks around going like this, going, just like, I'm so powerful, with a weird Joker face, going, They're like possessed by something. And so they're not just sociopaths or psychopaths. Some of them act like demon goblins. I mean, would you let your child anywhere near that creature? And then let's show people Elon Musk now everywhere. His eyes are totally wide open. Is it a brain chip? Is it a bunch of amphetamines? We know they use a lot of drugs in Silicon Valley. David, you know, you've got a lot of contacts. What in the hell is going on with these people?
Well, let me tell you a story. Long time ago, before I was into any of this stuff, I was working at the BBC and was a national spokesman for the British Green Party. Not for very long, but I'm glad I was. It did not serve me well in understanding the green mentality today. But anyway, I was invited onto a television program. It was an election program with results were coming in for the European elections. And I turned up, and the lady who met me took me into the makeup room, and the door was open. So I walk in, and to me, there's no one there. The room seemed empty. It's a makeup room. And the lady says, oh, someone will be along to see you in a minute, and walks out. So I sit down, I'm staring at the mirror. And then something caught my eye just to my right. And I turned around, and sitting behind the door, which is why I couldn't see him, waiting to have his makeup taken off, he'd just been interviewed on the show, was a guy called Ted Heath, who was a former prime minister of Britain. He was the one, more than anyone else, that got us into the European Union. He actually signed us in to call the common market then. And it was this was an experience which made sense later when I started to understand what the world was about. So I nodded to him, all right, mate, yeah. And he looks at me, and he doesn't acknowledge me. He doesn't move. Well, he actually did move. He turned and looked towards me with a swivel seat. And he looks at me, and he never moved, but his eyes started at the top of my head and slowly went down to my feet, like you were scanning me, and then went back again. And he had this quizzical, strange look on his face, like, But the key point was this. While he was doing it, his eyes went totally black. And I mean the entire eye, no whites, no pupils, nothing, entirely black. And it was, I described this to people afterwards. It was like looking into 2 black holes, looking through
Exactly.
him.
It was like the other dimension was right there. Well, I've told the story growing up in Dallas, the richest county in Texas at the time.
AI shell. Yep. His body's an AI shell, and I was looking through to what is actually, driving these people. They are literally biological AI software programs, and that's why they act as they do. And because they don't have what people call a soul, this energetic field of vitality, their eyes look dead because there's no vibrance, there's no, if you like, no soul there. And then, I said earlier about religions. Well, Christianity calls this phenomenon demons. Islam calls it the jinn. The Gnostic people call them the Archons. The Zulus call them the Chitahuri. They are the same. It's the same phenomenon, just in different names. And people talk about the soulless ones. Well, an AI machine's not got a soul, has it? And that's what we're dealing with. And once we start to realize what the dynamic is, and the
so you're
fact
saying
that
the aliens are among us, the fallen ones, like the Bible says that they would walk around, there'd be angels too that look like normal men. That's all in the Old Testament. You're saying that's what they are.
This whole theme of the fallen angels in biblical terms, that's exactly the force I'm talking about. You know, what we need to do, religions and non-religious people like me, non-bricks and mortar religion, as my father used to call it, but everyone to their own. We need to come together and see that actually in different ways, we are in so many areas actually telling the same story.
Well, here's the thing I know, Dave, we need to go to calls, is that the globalists are anti-human. They say all humans must die to then transcend. This sounds like an alien transmission. It's just psychotic, and they actually run things, and they're actually doing it. Let's take a call. Sherry in Ohio has a question for David Icke. Sherry, thanks for holding. Go ahead.